ha 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 ha. Check out the bazaar. All right, all right, all right. I'm wearing this for a reason. 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 Welcome, 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 welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Go to the YouTube channel. Therefore, you will be able to speak directly with us and join us and see all the videos that will be played. Join us, join us, join us, join us. All right, y'all. I'm just gonna see what's going on here. I should be live on YouTube. All right, all right, all right. Here we go, here we go, here we go, here we go. All right. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's been about a few more minutes, few more minutes, few more minutes. Straight wellness, straight wellness, straight wellness. All right, all right, all right. All right, all right, all right. So, welcome to Straight Wellness, y'all. I'm Sean Bolden, Sean B. I am about to have my guest of honor join me. Those who are on Instagram, you will only be able to hear, you will not be able to see. Subscribe here on YouTube. Subscribe. And let's do this. So Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. Welcome, 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 welcome. All right, all right. So tonight we're going to be dealing with and we're going to be speaking about, I'm about to post the link. Let's see here. Invite. I'm about to post the link here. So if you want to join us, you can try and join. All right now. So these are the comments. This is what's going down. This is straight wellness, y'all. Straight wellness. Straight wellness. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Instagram is backtracking. I have myself here. I will be joined by my good friend and licensed therapist, Sherma Prescott Clark. So, in case you didn't hear us last week, you will be getting a treat because we will be speaking about healing versus coping. Healing versus coping. And we will be discussing this. She will be giving us her professional opinion, and I will be giving you my perspective as well. So, yeah, so healing versus coping. Healing versus coping. Tonight is going to be the night. If you're on Instagram, you can go up in the bio, you can get on the YouTube page. We will be discussing with Sherma P. Clark, healing versus coping. She is a licensed therapist. She is a life coach, and she will be discussing it from her professional opinion. And I will be discussing, some of my thoughts on those things as well. So join, give us a few minutes. She will be in. If you're watching it, you will not be able to see the videos over here on Instagram. So you need to go into the bio. Yep, right up there in the bio, and go over to Instagram. All right, I see you, Sherma. I see you. How are you today? Yes. So I'm about to add you to the stream, Sherma, and we can start getting it on. Hey,
Hey,
look at that. Has your name, has everything, your initials and letters, and you're gonna have to explain some of those things in a minute. But welcome, welcome, welcome.
thank you.
As I'm saying, this is Straight Wellness. We are here on YouTube today. I am also here on Thank you. I'm going to pin that. I'm going to pin that comment. Yes, Napalm. I'm pinning your comment because thank you for putting that up there. Tonight we are going to be speaking healing versus coping. Woo, we're gonna look at a video. We're going to, see what it is that they feel about it, and we're gonna discuss it. I think I'm gonna start off with putting the video there, putting it up, letting it play. It's about an 8-minute video. I probably will stop it at certain points because I want to be able to discuss it. So we'll go from there. Can y'all hear on Instagram? Can y'all hear Sherman say something, please?
What's up?
All right. Can y'all hear Sherman? Can y'all hear Sherman? Napalm, can you hear Sherman? If so, just give me a thumbs up real quick and we will go and start getting it on. So Napalm, did you hear her? All right. Yes. All right, cool. So we're going to start getting it on. Thank you for joining me here on Instagram. Thank you for y'all who are joining on YouTube and Facebook. By the way, Sherman, this is on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook where we are. But on Instagram, we can't actually see the visual. They can only hear us. So they're going to be listening in while we listen to this video. And hopefully we won't have any technical difficulties. All right, y'all. I'm going to add the video. And we're gonna to allow them to discuss it. Hold on 1 second. And by the way, the video is by my man Cali, so I want to give him his props. It's his video. He's the light-skinned brother right there, and he's having a discussion with the brown-skinned brother, and we will start it right now.
Gentleman about the difference of how it is that he's coping and not really necessarily getting hit as she was sprayed in there. And so when I first saw that clip and I was thinking about everything that was going on, I had to get my brother to come out here and talk about this movement, the BS movement. And I'm gonna let him talk about this movement because I felt like the clip that I just saw right here, it coincides with this movement.
It does. First off, hey, good evening, everybody. I know that our Style Street Minister King Khalid always out here grinding for God. God's #1 hype man out here, turning up and always for God. With that being said, into the question he was saying about the video we just watched, and it's about coping and what was the other one? Healing. Coping and healing. I mean, you first initially talked to me about it. I kind of did take it the wrong way, but I was immediately trying to think like how I could say something that's going to be against what she said. But now that I watched the video, and I understand what she means, because as she used the analogy of putting a brick in the hand and tying it up, like you cope with this behavior. So it's like you carry the weight of whatever it is around you, but instead of you healing it and letting go of the weight, you hold on to it the whole time you live. So, like I said, you're coping with it now. And that's the difference between coping and healing. That's what she was getting at. It's a very, very big point because I had coped with a lot of my problems. And I'm still coping with some of them today. But I'm learning now through the BS movement. That's why I brought it up. Is breaking the silence is helping me to learn more about myself because one, sharing, you'll start to heal and feel better because you start to erase old memories and stuff of what it was, replacing with good ones. So that's a good cycle of how the brain works as far as getting rid of the old traumas is focusing on the positive things and interacting and doing consistently.
All right, Sharma, we're going to stop it there only because I want to be able to start tapping into something that he said, which is coping versus healing. And a lot of us don't cope. I mean, a lot of us cope with things and don't heal things. Can you first start with giving us your definition or your professional perspective on those two scenarios, coping versus healing? Wait. I'm having trouble hearing you. You're
Oh, no, I
muted.
muted. I had muted. So I was going to say, first of all, I commend them for even having the conversation,
Absolutely.
and seeing, brothers start talking about their feelings and their mental health is an awesome and amazing thing. And I feel like it's long overdue. There's a little bit of an echo. I'm not sure where it's.
You're hearing the echo? Let me see if I can help that out by muting something. Let's see what I need to mute. Go ahead and speak. Do you still hear an echo?
Yeah. No. Oh yeah.
Okay, that was my phone, but we're not gonna do that. Let me see if I can go over here and see if I can get rid of this echo.
Yeah, is your phone?
I don't have my phone. You know what? Let me double check that. All right. Let me X out of this. Do you still hear an echo?
Let me.
You still hear it?
I can still hear it.
Okay.
I'll try to. Sometimes I don't like hearing myself talk though.
All right. Well, let me see if I can mute this portion. I don't think this is it, but we're gonna try it anyway. All right, and I'll mute myself as well, so this way you might not hear it.
So I'm wondering if you're muted, if people can still hear me, because you muted. You have to unmute. You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, cool. Hopefully everybody else can hear me too. But what I was saying is that to me, the healing versus coping is a tricky word because we do need to heal, but we also need to cope. And so in my industry, there is healthy coping skills and unhealthy coping skills. So some of the things that he was referring to are actually unhealthy coping skills. They're still coping skills, but they're unhealthy coping skills. And
okay, and we didn't get to all of what he said yet. So we're going to listen to what he said, and I'm going to let you go. I just want you to first tap into what you just said.
I feel like there is a need for both. Let me just say that. There's a need for both. But we're looking at healthy coping skills versus unhealthy coping skills. You're muted.
Okay, we're going to go back into looking at the video some more.
Just unmute.
I mean, of course, I was suffering at the time from drugs and alcohol addictions and other sexual rising, a lot of different things that I was struggling with. So they were all thrown me from early in life. So I learned to cope with them. They never healed from them. That's why they stuck with me all my life. And then eventually it progressed. Because unfortunately I formed a progressive disease of alcoholism and just called it addiction. Because of many different things I was addicted to, not just drugs, alcohol. So as I was a younger person and got hurt from trauma, instead of trying to heal from it, I started coping with it. And as I cope with it, I learned to develop all these negative characteristics. All these negative characteristics were formed, like multiple personality disorders, narcissism, and different things like that. These type of traumas start to form. I mean, not traumas, but illnesses, mental diseases, mental issues.
Okay, Sherma, I think this is what you was referring to.
Yeah.
And I want you to really tap into that because he was saying, narcissism and things of that nature. And let me share what I feel about the reason why I don't use that word narcissism is because when I learned that it was a diagnosis, and I'm not here to be able to diagnose anyone, but I hear it being so loosely used by so many different people in the way that he just used it. And I want to know whether that was actual or whether that was just in my mind. So if you can tap on that, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, so narcissism has become a catchphrase now. Um, Anytime people are selfish or into themselves or egotistical, they're being called narcissistic. So you are absolutely right, Sean. Narcissism is a actual mental health disorder, and there are specific characteristics to the mental health disorder. So I would say that there are probably many people who fall into narcissism, but and then he mentioned a very serious mental health disorder, which is multiple personality disorder. Um, so I'm curious, which I don't know because I don't know him. I'm curious as to if he actually went to a mental health professional who diagnosed him with narcissism and or diagnosed him with multiple personality disorder, or if he feels that if he has a Jekyll and Hyde personality, that that's considered multiple personality, which it's not. People who have multiple personality disorder dissociate, which is also a term now that I hear on TikTok all the time that everybody's using. People can have dissociative characteristics, but it doesn't mean they actually have dissociative disorder. So a lot of times people who have dissociative disorder have multiple personalities, and they're not even aware of when they go into another personality. So there are times that they might be aware that there's another whole personality form. But when people have dissociative disorder or multiple personalities, they lose big spaces of time. Like you could be talking to me right now, and then tomorrow you don't remember, what happened between 8:49 and 11 p.m. because dissociative disorder, you actually completely detach from reality. And people who have multiple personalities go into a whole other character, other personality. Sometimes the personality has a whole name, a whole different persona, and you don't necessarily remember even being that person having a conversation. So you are fragmented in who you are as a person. So I'm wondering if that's just a term he's using to describe himself or if he's been diagnosed. If he is, I would be really careful about labeling myself that way. And you really need to know what labels you're putting on yourself.
Oh man, that's definitely something that I agree with. And even further, I think that it's not just us who label folks. I'm gonna mute you real quick. I think it's not only us who label folks, but there are people who are using it so loosely, and it's disturbing to me because all of these labels are starting to be made out as if they're reality. And so, to your point that you just made, this gentleman might be giving himself and deeming himself something that he actually is not, but because everybody is so popular and he has characteristics of it, which, as you described, all of us do have characteristics at one point or another, does not make it a disorder. And it's disturbing because there's so many people who are running with it, and now they're feeling almost like they are therapists. Yeah. And that's why, me personally, I try not to use the word narcissist when a lot of people use it so loosely, because I'm not a therapist. I can't diagnose you because you have characteristics or similarities of what's described in what I looked up. And this is unfortunately social media, mediarists instead of therapists, social mediarists that keep coming up with these things, and it is forming a cycle that's becoming dysfunctional and disturbing to me. What are your thoughts on
that? Some people are just selfish. Some people are just self-centered. Some people are into themselves. Some people are egotistical. It doesn't mean they're not narcissistic. There's a lot more that goes with narcissism than someone who might be selfish. So yes, I completely agree with you that it's a catchphrase. it's an in phrase. It's being used a lot, and unfortunately, because it's popular, anyone that exhibits any semblance of that, is labeled as, especially the word narcissism. I mean, he used multiple personality, which I don't hear that from people a lot, but I hear narcissistic constantly.
Right. And I'm thinking that multiple personality might be something he actually was diagnosed with,
Yeah,
because
I really would be curious to know it, if he, sought sought a mental health professional, had a formal diagnosis, and how, I'd love to talk to him and find out how it affected him.
right.
Because that is something that you absolutely would need to go to a therapist for, in order to even manage that, and make sure that it's managed properly, and that you have healthy coping skills in order to deal with it and address it.
Absolutely. Now speaking of healthy coping skills, first off, before we get into that, can you just refresh people who wasn't here last week, some of the different things uh that people don't know, like the differences between psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and so on, because you just made mention that of definitely would need to be diagnosed, and definitely would need to be have a, some type of once you're diagnosed, what's the next step is, I guess, what I'm asking. You can help us with understanding that.
Yeah. So if he did indeed, like, when I see clients, if I suspected that someone had this dissociative disorder, or had multiple personalities, I would send them to a psychologist to be assessed, to be formally diagnosed. Um, I can't say there's medication for that. I mean, there's medication for certain disorders, clinical depression, schizophrenia, because when people are schizophrenic, they tend to hear voices. So they may have auditory, which is they hear voices, or visual hallucinations. So they would see a psychiatrist. So the psychiatrist, I refer to psychiatrists if I feel that someone has a mental health disorder that would require assessment for medication, which also includes ADHD. I think I lost I'm not sure what happened with the camera. Am I still on? Okay. My computer did something weird. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I
just hold
lost
on.
you.
We can still
Okay.
see and hear you.
Okay. I just couldn't see you guys, so I apologize. But if someone had clinical depression, if someone had bipolar disorder, if someone had schizophrenia, those type of diagnoses, I would have them evaluated by a psychiatrist for medication. We also send for ADHD. Medical doctors can also, like a pediatrician or a general practitioner, medical doctor can also diagnose things like ADHD. But there's assessments that people go through, that professionals go through, in order to give the diagnosis for those types of diagnosis. So I refer, and then what happens after that? For example, I cannot do therapy with someone who is actively schizophrenic, because I'm battling with voices. They're hearing voices. They can't hear me. They can't process what I'm saying if I'm battling with the voices that they're hearing in their head, or they're seeing, they're hallucinating. First, we have to get them stabilized. And so the medication, I used to be really against medication until, I went to grad school and understood what medication is for. And so once they're medicated and they're more stable, then they come back to me for the actual therapy. So psychiatrists are actually medical doctors. They go to medical school. So they go through the whole psychological rounds and psychiatric rounds, and then they actually go to medical school, just like other doctors do, and their specialty ends up being psychiatry. Psychologists are more, they do a lot of research. They're the ones that will do your research papers, and when we have what we call scholarly articles that are research articles, they're the ones that you're going to see teaching at a university level. They do assessments, they diagnose. I can do diagnosis, but I don't formally diagnose, and I'm the person that's preventative. So you come to me so that I can help you get coping skills, process what you're going through in order to, I guess, help you find healthy coping skills so that you don't develop a mental health disorder down the line, so that you don't have a mental break. So a lot of our roles kind of intertwine, but some of them do completely different things. Like psychiatrists do completely different. You know, they are medical doctors, and so I don't prescribe medication. I will send my client out for medication.
Okay, so you just touched on something that definitely I'm a little sensitive to this word, narcissism. But I'm just curious on what type of diagnosis would an actual person who's diagnosed with narcissism, not just this popular word of egotistical and things of that nature that is being disguised or being used as, what would be, you know, some of the diagnoses, if you know, that would describe an actual narcissist as opposed to somebody's opinion on, like you said, an egotistical person, etc.
So narcissism, and now you're gonna make me, I don't have my DSM. So we use a book called the DSM-5. And now there's a updated version that we use to actually pull up diagnosis. I was gonna say, I don't know if I lost you, Sean, because I don't see your face anymore, but so narcissism is actually a personality disorder. And personality disorders are hard to treat. So they are, it's not something necessarily that you're cured from. It's something that you have to learn to recognize. Oh, there you are. Did I lose you?
Not at all. I went over to try. I just put up my thing because I was going to go get the book that you showed me so I could show it. So if I go there, I'm here still. So you can.
No, but I'm saying the DSM-5 is what. So I would run and grab it if you want, but there's a big book called the DSM-5 that that we diagnose from. But so when I read narcissism, it's going to sound like I said, some people have traits of it, but exaggerated sense of self-importance, sense of entitlement, that require constant excessive admiration. So they want to be admired. And narcissistic people appear to be confident, but they're very insecure. So all of that is like a mask because they feel very insignificant and insecure. So it's like a level of grandiosity in a sense. So they, you know, they want to be recognized. They want constant admiration. They exaggerate their achievements. Like, you know, there's somebody I have in mind, but I'm not going to say it because it's a political thing, and I don't want to. I don't want to get political. So I won't. I'll do that. They expect. They don't own up to things ever. They take advantage of people. They
Wait. Those are two characteristics that, because the rest of the characteristics, yeah, all right, I might be guilty sometimes. But those
there are
other
levels to it. There are levels to it. So when you see it in the extreme level, that's when we really look at someone as being narcissistic. Because like I said, I think all of us have some traits, but when you see a compilation of most of these traits, then you look at that. They're envious of other people. They don't want to see people succeed. They one up people constantly. They believe in an arrogant. They behave in an arrogant manner. They want the best of everything. They want everything, even if they don't deserve it. They want admiration, even if it's undeserved. So that's some of the traits. But as I was saying, it is a mental health disorder, but it's what we call a personality disorder. It's different than schizophrenia. It's different than depression. It's different than anxiety. It's
What's
what we
the,
call personality disorder.
what's the
And
difference? Personality versus what's the other one?
personality, the other ones are mental health disorders, but narcissism and borderline personality fall under personality disorders. So those are hard to treat. So what's the difference? Someone could have depression, and so if they go to therapy, they may learn coping skills, healthy coping skills to deal with their depression. Some people who have major clinical depression may need medication to stabilize, and then they go to therapy. Some people who might have mild, moderate depression or have what we call situational depression, like, if someone dies and they're depressed during that time and they need support, they show improvement. People who have personality disorders, I'm not saying they don't improve, but it's a little more difficult to get them to improve. Borderline personality disorder people are hard to treat, and it just takes a lot of effort and time, really, to give them coping skills, because at times it's hard for them to recognize some of their behaviors. And I'm not saying they can't improve, it's just a little more difficult for them to improve. And they're tough. Sometimes they're tough to work with. It takes time, effort, and willingness from them to be able to recognize what they're doing and how it affects other people.
Wow. So is it because let me think of a person that you mentioned that indirectly that I assume might be somebody in a significant position in a country, for example, and and what you stated, there's a fine line I feel between confidence and arrogance. There's a fine line between some of those characteristics as far as that you describe, and that's why when you started saying some of the other things like entitlement or a sense of getting one upping somebody or envy and things of that nature, that's where I feel like and not having any, you didn't say this, but I'm assuming that this might be a characteristic, not having any regard or consideration for others and how you make them feel. But suppose your confidence makes an insecure person feel even more insecure. Because I feel like sometimes that happens and the person who's insecure starts pointing at that person, you're a narcissist, not identifying their own insecurity, which makes them what they are accusing that person of, because they are now displaying the characteristics of I guess envy. I don't know the word, but now
Well, you just said it. They're insecure. But I mean, you can gauge when someone is being insecure as well. But I get what you're saying. Like, they're pointing the finger and saying, because they're internalizing it and feeling insecure about it. And rather than saying, that's an insecurity that I have, they might point the finger and say, you're narcissistic. But also narcissistic people have difficulty feeling empathy for others also.
And that's why when I have been accused of a narcissist, I really looked up the definition and I was like, oh, you really are not you're conveniently using parts of this description and parts of the characteristics that you're feeling internally, and you're trying to project that onto me. And I'm like, and because I'm confident, I'm like, I refuse and I deflect that. But at the same time, I tried not to say, well, that's your own insecurity, because that just kind of segues, which is the empathetic part of me. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't want to call them delusional. I don't want to call them insecure. Because it just kind of continues that cycle of where the issue is. And I don't even want to say that they have a personality disorder, because I don't feel insecurity is a personality disorder. So what do you?
It is. I mean, insecurity is not a personality disorder, but there may be other things that are wrapped in that. Everyone doesn't necessarily have a mental health disorder. I feel like we all sometimes need support in different things, but insecurity, I mean, it could be wrapped in, trauma. And so we have to kind of look at what's causing the insecurity. I will say though, Kashawn B, I think people who were on last week know that we are old friends. I will say that I have accused you at times of being insensitive, though. I would never call you narcissistic, but I have called you insensitive before.
And in fairness, I embrace that. I accept that because there are times where I am insensitive. And that's part of why I can't embrace narcissism, because in acknowledging that, I am as well being sensitive, understanding that I'm being insensitive, and knowing that maybe I can try not to be as insensitive on certain circumstances. And it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So I want to ask you if you want to show the rest of the video, because there were some things that I wanted to address about what he talks about as far as like the coping skills versus the healing.
Absolutely. I want to do that, as well as I'm getting some questions over here. I got Bill over here,
Cool.
some questions on Facebook. So everybody, you can also come to YouTube if in fact you want to see us. Well, actually, Facebook, you are seeing us. Instagram, if you're on Instagram, go to the link in my bio and you can come over to YouTube, and you'll be able to see who I'm speaking with. You'll be able to see the video that I'm about to play and engage with us further. All right, Instagram. All right, YouTube, and here we go with the rest of the video. I'm gonna let it play out to its entirety now, so that we can finish talking about it afterward. Again, this is Sharma P. Clark. She's a licensed therapist. She's the host, and I am the guest on Straight Wellness here.
You're the host too.
Well, I received that, and we'll be hosts together. But I really want to identify you respectively, and you deserve that host title in Straight Wellness, because quite frankly, your professional opinion, which is what you're offering us, is very valued and well needed to many of us, including myself. So again, Sharma Prescott Clark, who's a licensed therapist as well as a life coach, is joining us every Friday here on YouTube now. So don't forget to check us. All right, we're going to get to the video, y'all.
Start to form because you're coping with it. And just because you cope with it doesn't mean you ever heal from it. That's the significance of what she was saying. So I definitely
Unmute.
that I have been delivered by the grace of God. Okay. Now that I've been delivered from my dark days, and now I'm walking in the light, I'm learning, ladies and gentlemen, just like anybody else can learn. Learning new behaviors about how to identify when trauma of the past is affecting your regular day life. My sobriety has been able to be able to notice that. But even in my sobriety, I can now identify how much by me coping with the pains, right, crippled me into my adulthood. Because if I had tried to heal it when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have developed so many different disorders, mental disorders.
And sometimes we use vices as the coping mechanism without getting to the root. So we all have addictions. We'll all have something that we use to cope with pain. And sometimes it could be food, it could be drugs, it could be, there'd be things that we use because it numbs us. It numbs us temporarily. It doesn't really fix it, but it numbs us. So having these type of conversations, y'all, we've got to have safe spaces for men.
Mm-hmm.
Because in this, we go through stuff. I was someone that experienced over 17 years of mental abuse, verbal abuse, child abuse, physical abuse.
Yeah.
You know, and we get this macho. I'm tough. You know what I'm saying? And I can. We superheroes.
We got it.
You know.
Because we talk about the man rules, and just to jump back into the man rules real quick is like they're good, like I said, to install good manly traits about how we're supposed to be as men, but then they can get misconstrued because one of the ones that we just said, which was men don't cry, that was one of the situations that crippled me the most, and that's because I couldn't show no emotion. I had to keep it all bottled up inside, and when it all bottled up inside, it starts to form no longer into sadness and tears. It starts to feel anger. You know what I mean? It feels anger, and then not only does it feel anger, you look for an escape, and that's when you are quickly to move into substance abuse, because that's a good way to get an escape from reality. So that's kind of what I was dealing with, and that's what made me really start to cope with that. And the man rules kept that trauma locked inside. You know what I mean? Being taught to you can't cry, men don't do this, men don't show no emotion, men don't act like this, all these different things. It made me bottle up all my emotions inside, lock it away until it developed a situation to where one, it was making me angry. I couldn't express myself. I didn't want to no longer like my reality. So I ventured off into drugs and alcohol to take me away from my reality. And then that's where, unfortunately, alcoholism formed at the early age of 12 for me to escape reality. But hopefully that this conversation and conversations like this and through the BS movement and sharing information about my real life experience will be able to help another brother out there or a younger child or whatever I may be going through that if you are hurt and you are damaged and you are suffering in silence, that please don't do that. I want to acknowledge Queen Afi in Domestic Violence Wears Many Tags, because she has created a safe space for men. And actually, she is one of the main reasons why I'm able to come up here and speak about things like this now, because she helped me break the silence. And she invited me to a safe space for men group that had just started maybe a year or two ago, and I was able to share. And when I did, it just triggered something in me. And so I actually think they got a Green Table Talk event right now going on with 3 or 4 men right now talking about life experiences and traumas. That's probably participating right now. So y'all can get all kinds of different information from different resources, because there are like-minded people out here raising awareness about these things, especially when it comes to mental health. So that's what I got on that. And I got plenty more for you.
All right, we're back. Okay. So, Sharma, I'm going to leave the floor to you. We just heard the commentary, and now I want you to be able to allow your professional assessment and opinion on what he was speaking about.
I mean, I heard so much. And so there is so I looked up, because I like research. But there is a study that was done in 2018 that says 56 to 74% of Black males who have had traumatic events in their lives never sought mental health support. So 56 to 74% of Black males who've had a traumatic event happen never sought support. 62% of Black males have actually experienced a traumatic event. So more than half of the Black males have experienced a traumatic event.
Wow.
62% have experienced it. 59% of Black males have heard about it, heard of a traumatic event that occurred, in their family, among their friends. And some of the trauma includes physical abuse and assault. And so a lot of times people think that men aren't abused. Men are abused as well. So physical abuse, physical assault, sexual abuse, serious accidents or injuries, death of a loved one, domestic violence, and emotional abuse. So 59% of Black males have experienced one or multiple forms of trauma. And so he talked about his addiction. And so I would like to come on at another time and just talk about addiction, because that's a whole topic that, can fill a whole hour. But what he talks about is what we were saying. He's talking about healing versus coping. And I said both are necessary. But what he's talking about are all the unhealthy coping skills that he learned. And so when you come to therapy, what we talk about is healthy coping skills. Like, how do you change that? And what happens in your brain, so I'm going to be a little scientific just for a second, but not too deep. But we all form what we call neural pathways in our brain. So that's kind of the attachment to behaviors and actions in our brain. Like we have neural pathways that are formed, which, attach to the way we interact and the way we behave and react to certain things. So when people form unhealthy coping skills, they continue to repeat them over and over again, because we form the neural pathway saying, this is how I should behave or react to this situation. So healthy coping skills, and he touched on this himself when he said he learned to change his behavior. So the more you learn healthy coping skills, the more you form new neural pathways, because your brain grows and changes all the time. So you form new neural pathways, and then you learn to react to things differently and in a more healthy way once you learn those skills and you practice those skills. So, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. But addiction in and of itself, you don't heal from addiction. He talked about his sobriety, you get into recovery, but you don't really heal from it. What you do is you learn healthy coping skills, because I can tell you that I've worked with addicts for years. And when addicts get stressed out, when people who have addiction and abuse issues and they get stressed out, they want to use. They want to go back and drink. They want to, they want to smoke crack. They want to, take a hit of something, whatever their drug of choice is, whether it's cocaine, alcohol, they feel triggered to go back and use again so that they can feel better, so they can numb out. And what happens is they learn healthy skills, then they use those skills. They might call their sponsor. They may go to a meeting. They may use some of their coping skills, the healthier ones, in order not to relapse or use again. So it's not that it goes away. They just learn how to deal with it differently.
Okay, there's a couple of questions that came in. One earlier was, but what if they are doing things to achieve their goals and achieving them? So, and he says, Sean, you don't have no sense of entitlement. That was earlier on when we was describing narcissists. But here's his last question. Do coping skills create defense mechanisms?
Healthy coping skills do not create defense mechanisms. People who are defensive because they haven't healed whatever the issue is. So when people become defensive about something, that's an open wound still. Because when you have a coping skill, you've gotten to a point where you've gotten to a place of balance where you can deal with your issue without getting triggered by it. So if you're still seeing people being defensive about it, I say that's still an open wound. That's some issue.
And you mentioned that other word that's popular, triggered, baby. Triggered is that word that is
they got triggered from therapy, but now everybody's using the word triggered because that's like a therapeutic term, but everybody's using it.
And you taught me a couple of weeks ago that triggered is what you just was describing, unhealed or unresolved circumstances, because and it made logical sense to me, because if you get triggered, you are still bothered somehow, some way. If you don't get triggered, you're not bothered. So it kind of makes sense it made all the sense in the world when you said that, because I'm like, yo, if something has triggered me, then deep down, something wrong with me in regards to that issue or whatever it is. And I had to reflect on things that triggered me and people that triggered me and try to go to the root of what triggered me and why it triggered me, which is part of, I guess, what therapy would provide when you're in it.
Yeah. So, Christopher, a defense mechanism is an unhealthy coping skill, just to be frank. It's an unhealthy coping skill. And the goal is to find healthy coping skills.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And that for you, Bear. Bear is Christopher. Christopher is Bear, but we professionally know him as Christopher Stokes, but lovingly know him as Bear. So yeah, that's definitely a good question. Any other questions, please feel free to directly do that. All those who are joining me on Instagram, you cannot see Sherma P. Clark, excuse me, because I know her as Sherma P. originally, but it's Sherma P. Clark, and she's a licensed therapist who is helping us in understanding some of the professional definitions, professional ideas. And today's subject is coping versus healing, and she was giving us some ideas of those things. I'm about to post another question by Bear Sherma. Here it is. It says, but what if you're the one pulling the trigger? How about leave me alone?
So I'm trying to get clarity on what that means. So he's saying if he's the one that's, I can't hear you.
No, I was speaking Instagram. Continue.
Okay. So I'm trying to get clarity on that. I don't know if I can call you Bear. I don't know if we're that. So
yeah.
I'll call you Bear. I guess I can call you Bear. So when you say pull, if you're the one pulling the trigger, are you saying if you're the one that's causing the issue?
No, I believe the way I'm reading it is he's saying somebody is pulling the trigger on him, and he's like, how about leave me alone? But they're pulling they are the one, is what he said. I'll put that up. They are the one, and he's saying that they are basically, but what she said earlier is if you're being triggered by it, then that might be part of the issue. Correct, Sean?
Yeah, but it depends too. Like if he said if somebody's pulling the trigger, how about leave me alone? It really depends on the situation, because you have the right to also set healthy boundaries with people. Because if you have someone who is unhealthy, having an unhealthy interaction with you, and this is not a healthy situation or healthy exchange that you're having with someone, it's also okay to set a boundary where you set the boundary and say, hey, I'm not going to have this conversation with you. So it's kind of a dichotomy. I would say it depends on the reaction. So if you have somebody that, when I think of defense mechanism, I'm looking at someone who is going off, getting heated, upset, angry, yelling, cussing people out. That's kind of how I look at the defense mechanism. Not, hey, I'm not having this conversation with you. I'm going to draw the line here because you're not in a good space, or this is not something I want to discuss. I don't necessarily look at that as a defense mechanism. I look at that as setting a boundary with someone. A defense mechanism will be more like, Sean, you and I discussed a situation that you had with someone. And when you tried to have the conversation about the situation, when they started, yelling at you or cursing at you and going off, that's what I look at as that was the defense mechanism there. But a healthy boundary for that person would have been to say, hey, Sean, I'm not ready to discuss this. And so they have a right, if they get triggered, they have a right to set the boundary. It's just, how do you communicate that?
Say that again, because you're right. And I can respect a boundary, but here's where I sometimes have an issue with it. If you're saying, I'm not ready to discuss this right now, or I'm not there, I can respect that when I am confident that we will readdress it at some point in the future. And I feel like that falls short. It's just sometimes people are just trying to, or I call it defense mechanism. They're just trying to bury it or deflect because they just don't want to talk about it. And instead of saying that, they're saying, well, we could talk about it later, which then becomes what I trigger them when I bring it up. Like, it's later now.
Yeah, talk about it never. So you're referring to sometimes they don't want to talk about it ever. But people can't address things till they're ready, and I think I told you that. You can't force it. You can try to force it, and then sometimes when you force it, it becomes a defense mechanism. Then it becomes that unhealthy going off exchange, where people are yelling and cursing, and and then it becomes something that it's not healthy because no one is hearing each other. So yes, I believe people have the right to set boundaries if it's communicated in a respectful way.
Woo.
But when people start going off, that is a defense mechanism.
And the funny thing is, you said a couple of things. One, respectful way. This, I think, is where there is a lot of disconnect in a lot of relationships. The definition or the recognition of respect. Because, for example, as a man to a woman, often our animation, our tones get looked at offensively as it's an offense, and people start putting up, or women start putting up defense mechanisms to deflect from what might have been some trauma. But it's not really us. Like, for example, I give the example to ladies who I've had this with. I said, if I was in a barbershop and you came in, you would think that we were about to fight if you're sensitive to tones. Because we could sit there and be talking to each other, yo, no, I'm saying, yo, to where you would think that we're about to just go at it, and we're just having healthy dialogue in the barbershop. And we don't take offense to the tones. And so we don't feel disrespected. I think argument starts when an offense is taken.
Absolutely. But Sean,
go ahead.
I mean, we've talked about this. I can use myself as an example. I'm Trinidadian. I'm Caribbean. My husband is Midwestern. He doesn't communicate the way I communicate. He doesn't communicate the way my family communicates. And so there are many times that he feels that my tone might be aggressive, or to him, he would say aggressive. But when you understand cultural differences, even among Black people, I lived in New York, Sean. I mean, you're from New York. So people from New York tend to, be seen as a little more vocal, passionate, aggressive to some people, Caribbean people as well. So, all of that, I think you have to know the meaning behind things. And I feel like when you have an understanding of people and their personality, then you adjust a little more. But again, we're triggered when we're sensitive about things. Like if you talk to me, Sean, I know you're from New York. So the way you come at me won't bother me, but I'll tell you when it would. If I know that you're angry. Right. If I know that you're angry, then I take that tone completely different than if we're just having a passionate discussion.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because sometimes I do get angry when I'm accused of being disrespectful, or accused of being where I'm attacking, for lack of better words, when I'm not. Or when I'm yelling, I'm accused of saying, why are you yelling at me? And I'm like, I'm not yelling at you. And they're like, yes, you are, because they're sensitive to tone. And then I go in and go, this is yelling. Do you see the difference? And they're like, and it just escalates.
So you get triggered.
Right. I get sensitive and angered. I'm
And
not.
see, I can't go all the way into that because I'm not supposed to do therapy on here. I'm just supposed to talk about
Well,
things.
I'm just. I don't want you to, go therapeutic, but I'm just asking the question that when those boundaries are crossed unintentionally, how do we, or give us your opinion on how we might be able to have a mechanism to cope with that amicably without continuing or furthering the offense in either direction?
In either direction, I would say honestly, that's where your work comes in. That's where that is where your work comes in regards to recognizing, here's the word, that everybody uses, recognizing your own triggers. Because I am responsible for how I take things when people don't mean me harm. If you say something to me and I'm overly sensitive about it, and your intent was not to hurt me, harm me, and it was innocent, but I am being overly sensitive about something, then that's something that I have to look at. I have to look at, why is this triggering me? What's going on with me that this is causing this kind of reaction from me, and this person didn't intend that at all. You know what I mean? Now, if you do it maliciously, then that's different. But if there is no, ill intent, and I'm overly sensitive about something, that's when I look at someone and say, this is an unresolved issue for you. You haven't healed from this. This is still triggering you and causing you to, have issues interacting with people. And what's going on with you that you need to take a look at.
Wow. You know what's interesting? I remember you sharing with me, you told me that maliciously was the word that you just used. And what's interesting about that word to me is that if you know me and I'm a loving person, which is to our close friends and family members, is usually when this takes place, you're sensitive because maybe I hurt your feelings by something I said. So then you're accusatory that my intention is malicious. I've been accused of doing something intentionally because I brought something up or I triggered an emotion within them, and they don't get that it's their trigger. And when I try to bring it to their attention, like, nah, I'm not doing anything maliciously, and you just got triggered or something deeper than that, they go into denial. And I'm just like, and this is not your diagnosis. This is just my my license diagnosis, my driver's license diagnosis, that this is what goes on. And it's bothersome because I can see it. I can see when it shifted. I can see when they got offended or they were sensitive about something. But when they can't see it, that sensitivity or bringing that to their attention is almost next to impossible. But the reaction and the relationship that we're forming a building starts being destroyed because there is no resolution being taken, because there's no accountability. The other word, accountability on what they're doing.
Well, Sean, I will tell you, as a therapist, when I have people come in my office and I try to confront them with things, sometimes they don't see it. And I have to understand that they're not ready to see it. And so when they're not ready to see it, I take a step back.
And that's where your license therapy comes into place, where my driver's license does not help.
Yeah, I take a step back because, and I think we've had a conversation where I say, especially when people have trauma, and they're not ready to address that, they can be re-traumatized. I think we discussed that. But I take a step back because I know that I can't get someone to look at something or address something until they are ready. And so if this is where we have to stop today, then that's where we have to stop. And another day, I'll try to address it at another time. But people shut down and they cannot deal with things that they're not ready to deal with. And so forcing it on them doesn't do any good.
Yes,
And
ladies and gentlemen.
it doesn't help the relationship either. I will tell you that.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you ever wondered why or where my failed relationships come into play, she just described it. Because I am guilty and not proud of, but very guilty and working on exactly what you just said, not knowing when to stop beating a dead horse, so to speak. Or what I've been smacked in the face the last couple of weeks since we had these discussions originally is let go and let God is what I've been describing it as, because I have to be able to just let it go. And it's difficult. And I use the analogy that I learned from Pastor A.R. Bernard that helps me understand it, although it doesn't help me do it, which is the butterfly in a cocoon. I might share this with you, Shama, but there's a butterfly in a cocoon, and you see the butterfly struggling to get out the cocoon, and you see it. And I'm looking at that cocoon and that butterfly, which is my loved ones or anyone. I'm passionate about everyone. So when I see struggle, I automatically, innately want to be helpful. And so I would go and try and help them out of this cocoon. Oh, I see a struggling butterfly. Here, let me help you get out. And then the butterfly gets out the cocoon, spreads its wings, and withers and dies. Reason being is because the butterfly that struggle was helping to strengthen the wings, be able to help them to soar and be able to take flight. And my interference did not help that struggle. It hindered and destroyed that butterfly. So I've learned this through that analogy, but practicing it is not what I have learned yet. But just in understanding it, I'm trying to be a bit more, that's where that insensitivity description has come from often, is because I'm still trying to help you out. And you don't want that help. That was one of our first conversations long ago. You came, you spoke with me about some things, and I go automatically into trying to come up with a resolution. That's my male nature. And a lot of us men can relate to that. We want to resolve something. We see it as complaining, or we see it as, complaining. And if there's a complaint, we want to get a resolution so that you're at ease. But what I learned from you, and you told me, you said, Sean, sometimes people just want to vent. I already understand the resolution. I already know what I need to do. I just want to vent. And respectfully, I said, well, Shama, you know what? If you just want to vent, let me know ahead of time so I can prepare to get into that mode, because it's a process for me to get into that mode. And if not, here's my insensitivity. Go talk to your girlfriend about that. They don't mind listening to that. But I'm not built that way, is what I shared. And I think that was something that I learned from as well, because you then taught me that sometimes people are just venting and not complaining, where I thought of it as complaining. And there might be a fine line between the two, but that's why I'm like, let me know in advance. So ladies, if you speak Venus, I'm telling you Mars right now, we're saying, let us know in advance.
So let me tell you what I've noticed that happens when I'm doing therapy, right? Because most people that come into therapy, they're not coming to listen to me talk necessarily. They're coming to process, to talk about things. You may call it venting. Sometimes it is venting. Sometimes I just say they're processing. But what I've seen a lot of times when people are saying things out loud and they hear themselves, sometimes they come up with their own solution. So they don't come in and I tell them what to do. I ask questions. I might highlight something. I'll ask them to look at something. I'll ask them how they felt about it. But within that whole process of them discussing it, a lot of times they come up with their own solution where they go, oh my God, I just thought about this, or I didn't realize I was doing that. And so, yes, definitely women are talkers, but within talking things out, a lot of times people start recognizing their behavior, or they start recognizing a situation, they start coming up with solutions for themselves, or more things to look at. And so I feel like there's value in talking. That's why we recommend that people go to therapy so they can process stuff, but it also helps them work through things. I did want to bring up something about coping and healing. There are people who do neither. Per the video that we were just watching, two things that I wanted to talk about. You talking about, trying to push your loved ones and nudge them to come up with a solution and get healthy. The brother that was in the video, what's his name? The light-skinned brother?
Khalid.
No one told him what to do. He went through his process and started seeing what things were unhealthy in his life and what things needed to be worked on, so that he found healthier ways to address things, learned how to deal with his addiction. And so he did that when he was ready. No one came and said, hey, stop using drugs. And he did. No one said, stop being this way. And he did. He had to go through his process of making mistakes and bumping his head and learning, how it was damaging to his life. And as he did that, he learned healthier skills and learned a different way of doing things. So I'm saying all that to say is he healed when he was ready. He got better. His life got better when he was ready for it to get better. So as much as, we want to help our loved ones or friends or family members to get better, to recognize things, to stop doing this, stop this unhealthy behavior, they're not going to do it till they're ready, because they have to see it. And sometimes people see it's unhealthy, but they don't know what to do, or they're just not ready yet to address it. And the healing versus coping, some people do neither, Sean. Some people don't heal, and some people don't cope. Some people are just numb. Some people don't deal with it at all. And those are the people that just stuff it down and do nothing about it. And a lot of times they fall into depression, or they have unhealthy behaviors where they get into drugs, alcohol, sex. Because you know what? Sex is a coping skill for some people. Sex can become an unhealthy coping skill for people. Sex, you get the same dopamine hit from having an orgasm that you do from snorting cocaine. Same thing. Same hit.
Ooh, say it again. Say it again. Y'all hear that about sex?
People can get addicted to sex as well because it's a high. And so, so it's just really recognizing what you're doing while you're doing it. And are you doing this to numb out? Are you doing this to not deal with your discomfort, your pain, your drama in your life? And how do you address it? How do you deal with it? How do you find healthier coping skills for yourself?
Now, speaking of which, how do you, when you recognize that, which I have a tendency to do, I recognize it in a lot of my loved ones, even people that I don't know, and that's a gift and a curse, because the gift is I'm a bit able to recognize it, and usually I'm able to give some suggestions on some healthy coping skills, especially as I learn them. But it's the curse because it's usually the cursing comes from those who I love so much that it tears me apart. When you say it's not going to happen till they're ready. Well, I just went through something personally where that was a reality, and it went into the death of a person. And that death is what I was trying to avoid, or what concerned me, whether it's death by natural causes, stress, whether it's death by suicide, or whether it's death by homicide. Death being a result, and having people say the fact of you got to wait until they're ready I have an issue because sometimes they don't get ready. They take time for granted, and the stress mounts and it kills them, or they take time for granted and they wind up triggering somebody else that kills them in a homicide, or they take time for granted and they can't cope with it because they didn't try to get a resolution, and they get to a point to where they're super depressed and do not know how to deal with it and kill themselves or kill someone else. So those are things that concern me, and is and it's a blessing and a curse, because when I see a lot of those issues that are going on and I try and address it amicably, and again, my New York assertiveness and pushiness forces it on sometimes. Smack with let go and let God, let go and let time. But I'm curious on if you could give me some suggestions on how professionally I might be able to deal with it.
Ooh, I'm trying to say this in a because so I'm not diagnosing you, but I will say that sometimes people have to be careful about having a God complex, because who made them God? In other words, people can't heal all of the woes of everyone. All someone can do as a human being is say, hey, I want you to take a look at this. Here's a book you can read. Here's a meeting you can go to. Here's something that I learned that helped me. Why don't you try it? And at that point, you step back, because unless you're God, no one can make anyone be ready. And you say, what if it results in homicide, suicide? I don't want to sound insensitive, but it will. It will at times result in homicide and suicide and overdose. When treating addicts, we always tell them that there's 3 places that you will end up if you don't stop using. Well, it's you end up in jail. Well, actually 2. They say you end up in jail at some point, or you end up dead. End up in jail or you end up dead. And do you know how many family members knew that their loved one was going down that path and tried to help them and tried to talk to them, and it did not help, and some of them did overdose? It's frustrating for anyone to see their friends or family members going down a path that is destructive, but it is their path to take. It is not yours. It is not mine. All you can do is offer help, and then it's up to them to take the help when they're in a healthy enough place and ready to do so. I have people come in my office every day. Some of them are ready. Some of them stop coming because they're not ready. There's nothing I can do about that but offer what I can and hope that they end up in a place where they can receive it.
Okay.
And so let me say this to you, though. If someone is struggling with the fact that they're trying to help people and they can't reconcile that some people are going to take the advice and some people are not, then that is something that person has to reconcile inside themselves and get support to be okay with not being able to save the world. So I would say what's going on with that person, that they can't find a way to be settled with, I can't save everybody.
Well, first off, I can answer that easily, and I am that person. I'm not trying to save the world, but I have love in my heart. And God is love to me, and love is God. And so there are times where I have to sit back, but I tend to practice and try to be God-like, because that's what I've been taught through God, through scripture, through things of that nature. So no, I am not trying to be God, but insensitivity is really what I my love doesn't always allow me to practice. But then when I'm insensitive, I'm looked at a certain way. And then when I'm caring or loving, as I would call it, and some might call it overbearingly loving, but I feel like there's no conditions on love. So when I'm loving, it's looked at as you think you're God. And I'm like, well, God is loving. And so if you want to call me that or think that that's what I feel, then that's your right. And I won't dispute that. I'm just basically trying to be empathetic to issues that you're in denial of or you're not ready for, quote unquote. And because you're not ready and you're in denial, you're now lashing out at me and judging what you feel I am, when in fact, it's not. What it is that I'm loving you and I'm caring about you and I am trying to save you. But the world is not who I'm trying to save. Those who I love is who I'm trying to save. And unfortunately, those who I love will deflect often, and that hurts. And that I'm very vulnerable and able to say that hurts. It hurts to see it, and it hurts to be accused of um trying to do something malicious or trying to do something intentionally harmful to the person when you see something or recognize something. But to your point, I'm learning to allow the process to take its course, but that's only because of faith and quote unquote being godlike. Because if I was not, godlike, I wouldn't be able to receive. You know what? Let me back off. And I guess what I have to do is close my eyes, turn away, get away. That's the barrier, unfortunately, that I have to sometimes have, is I just need to let that person go.
But that's called self-care.
And I will say that self-care is not something that I practice well. And it's like I said, I don't understand. I do not practice self-care well because I'm one of those people that I'm going to jump in front of the bullet for my loved ones and die proudly because of it. I'm going to lay down. You know how they say on the airplane, this is what's interesting. They say on the airplane, cover your face first because you want to be able to help the other. I'm the person that if my child, I'm going to cover my child. And yeah, you could call me stubborn, you could call me foolish, you could call me whatever you want to call me, but I'm going to cover that face of my child and then try and cover my face. I'm going to try and swim and keep my child afloat or my loved one afloat in risk of drowning. And I don't know, that's just me.
So I can't get deep into this because again, I can't do therapy, but I have so many thoughts right now. I have so many thoughts, but I look at it as what I always tell people is people have to give from their reserve, not from their depletion. So people have to fill themselves up. When they talk about full cup, half empty cup, people have to fill themselves up so that they can give from their reserve. They give from their overflow. Overflow. So I tell my clients, you have to give from your overflow, not from your depletion. So in order to do that, people have to self-care, fill themselves up, and then they give from their overflow. So again, because we're talking about a lot of things and we're talking about coping skills, but I feel that a lot of times in families, sometimes there are people who want, and I have to say people because I can't direct it directly at one person when I speak, Sean, again, because I'm not here to do therapy, but people have to look at what situations are healthy for them and what are not. There's a word that I use, but I was told that, it's not the kindest word. Some people don't use it anymore, but there's a word that I use sometimes called codependency. And so sometimes when people are codependent, they forget about their own happiness, and their happiness and well-being is attached to others. And again, I will always say that people must give from their overflow, not from their depletion. So people, you give what you can. You have to know when to set boundaries. People have to know when to cut off that need to save someone else. I'm not saying be selfish and not be there for others, but I think people have to know when someone is capable of receiving it and when they're not. And so when they're not, one has to take a step back and then self-care, because that burning house, you run into a burning house to save someone, and the person doesn't want to come out the burning house. If the person doesn't want to come out the burning house, they're going to die and burn, and you're going to die and burn. So you can only give what people are ready to receive. If not, then you crash and burn with them. So
let's give it up for Cherie. That was a definite advice that I need to hear. Thank you. No, but seriously, I think there was a lot that you definitely touched on that I am applauding in jest, but I actually am applauding respectfully, because I received that, and there's a lot to that, and there's a lot that personally I need to understand. I feel like this, and I say it, and it baffles me all the time. I am not an asshole, but I know how to be one. I just don't like being an asshole. And unfortunately,
then don't be one, Sean.
Well, it's an asshole who just leaves you there stranded. Like, all right, yo, whatever. And it's funny because a lot of our people, my women, especially my men who are in the Black community or the urban community, and it's not just limited to Blacks even, they often have so much trauma in the LBC have so much trauma that they don't even recognize how bothered or how hurt they are. And because I was raised in that environment, that trauma-filled environment, what they call sometimes the ghettos, what they call dysfunctional homes and dysfunctional neighborhoods, I have a really clear indication and passion for trying to resolve that dysfunction. But it's so normalized amongst my loved ones and other people. My loved ones mean my brethrens in those communities, in those environments, that, and sisters, of course, that it goes unresolved. And that is one of my triggers that I'm working towards. And my only sanctity and release is the Lord. Because that's the only sense that I can make out of it when there's no sense in it. And we sometimes go through all types of diagnosis and all types of opinions, observations, but really there's no sense in a lot of the things that are normally looked at as sensible in this day and age, especially now in this social media fueled day and age. And it's bothersome to me, quite frankly. And thank you for helping me with your opinion. That's why I was applauding it. But I was, and I said that as well, it was unjust because I understand it. And what I understand it to be is just the unfortunate dysfunction that goes unaddressed because it's been normalized. And that's what I got with my driver's license over here.
So thank you, Sean. I mean, much to talk. I mean, I think we touched on the video and veered off a little bit, but I feel like it's all necessary. I do feel that I'm just happy to see that there's so much more awareness of mental health and that people are becoming, Black people are becoming more open to looking at. I mean, we still have a long way to go, but the conversations are becoming more normalized and people are becoming more open to discuss it. And I feel like that is so very important. The more we discuss it, the more we as Black people will be able to address our traumas and our issues. And also, the more we heal, the more we have to offer our family members, our children. Um, I love my parents, but at the same time, I'm Caribbean, and some of the things that are in the Caribbean community, I am my mother and father's child, but at the same time, there are things that I recognize about my upbringing that I deal with my child differently than maybe some of the things I dealt with. But I think the more we learn, the more we have to offer.
And I want to say this.
Community.
You're right. And I want to say this. It's not just the Caribbean culture. I love my church folks, but there's a lot of things that have been learned in the church environment, the same way in the Caribbean environment, the same way in the urban environments that, unfortunately, as you just described, are so natural and so learned that the unlearning process becomes a task that none of us choose to embark on or can embark on because it's overwhelming. But I thank you as well for opening up the discussion as well and having the discussion with me. And I look forward to doing it again next week so that we can continue on.
So much to talk about, Sean, because I will tell you, yes, I said Caribbean people, but I will say we all went through the slave trade. And so we have what we call generational trauma. And we have what we call pathological issues that are passed down genetically, not just psychologically, but genetically. And so we all share similar, we have, Caribbean people have different nuances, but at the same time, we all have traumas that we pass down. And a lot of it stemmed from way back, it began during slavery and just kind of, passed down generation to generation. So, again, I'm happy that we're starting to have these conversations because we bring awareness to, we're bringing awareness to things that we used to accept as being, oh, that's just the way it is. It doesn't have to be just the way it is. I mean, we can get better from it. We can work on healing and finding healthy coping skills and, raising our kids differently. And yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Great Wellness, and this is what we will be talking about in a lot of variety of ways and a lot of variety and a variety of subjects. And I'm going to ask you to share your closing words. I'm going to share my closing words first, and then I'm going to let you close with your words regarding coping versus healing. My closing words are, over the weekend, I heard a pastor say, I can't remember which pastor because I listened to a few of them, say that the world make simple things complicated, and Jesus and the Lord made complicated things simple. And the complicated task that we're speaking about, coping versus healing, and healing versus coping, and just the mental issues that go on within our communities, simply is rooted, in my opinion, as lack of trust that was learned. Ladies and gentlemen, let us start trying to learn how to trust. Let us start learning how to love. I had a conversation and I identified that consideration goes a long way. And two people that are not considerate equals war. One person who's not considerate and a person who is considerate equals possible war. Two considerate people equals unlikely war. And the more that you are exposed to inconsideration, the more that you will probably embrace and start acting inconsiderate. That's my last words.
And you put me on the spot, but I'm going to repeat: give from your overflow, not your depletion. So I would say, I just encourage everyone to learn how to self-care. And if you have issues that you've been dealing with, do not be ashamed to get support. We live with a lot of trauma. We live with a lot of issues. Sometimes we don't even recognize how they are affecting our lives. But the more that you deal with your issues, learn to heal, the better you will be for yourself, for your friends, for your children, for your significant others. It's just very important that we learn to be open and honest about these things, and that we find the support that we need. And everybody's not going to do therapy. I do feel that therapy is important, but I know that everyone may not do it and may not feel it's right for them. But I say, whether that support is your pastor, it's a mentor, self-help books, do your work, and continue to grow. And so, and just be open to, learning more about yourself, and learning, more as far as things that you can do to be healthier, and whole. So, that's what I say. But, we have a lot more. I still, moving forward, I'd like to talk about addictions and talk about, quite a few more things there. But at the same time, I know that, I do want to touch on later on. I think we touched on it a little bit last week about how some people have a distrust of mental health, and I understand why. But again, if you do decide, any of you decide to get therapy, make sure that your therapist is what I call multiculturally competent, which means they know about your culture, even if they're not Black, that they know about, or Hispanic or Asian, that they're familiar with your culture. And so if you find someone that is culturally competent and understands what your issues are and what your culture and, things about your family life, then it's less likely that you'll have a bad experience and be misdiagnosed. And I want to say too, just in closing, that Black people historically have received more serious mental health diagnosis than their white counterparts, Blacks and Hispanics. And that's something else we can get a little deeper into. But that's why it's important for you to make sure that you do your due diligence and make sure that you have someone that is, competent and that understands your culture, your ethnicity, and, even things about your lifestyle, so that they can guide you that way. Another subject, Sean, that we'll talk about, why, because then I'll get into how, Black people hear from God and what that's looked at as. I think I mentioned that to you. So that's a whole nother subject, in things that are culturally normal for us that other cultures may not understand. So we can talk about that at another time as well. But I hope that, that people become more open to, just making sure that they get the healing and the support that they need.
Absolutely. Thank you again. And I want to say this last thing. Because you get therapy does not mean you're crazy. Because you get therapy does not mean you're crazy. That is something that a lot of us have learned, in our upbringing and in our culture, is that the crazy person needs therapy. Nah, because you get therapy does not mean that you are crazy.
And it does not mean that you have a serious diagnosis. I have people who, I do see people that have depression, anxiety, But I also have people who have what we call marital discord, family discord. Sometimes people are coming in just because they need support. They might have just gotten divorced. Someone may have just died. They lost their job. They're not getting along with their spouse. So all those things people come in for therapy for support, not necessarily because they have, a serious mental health disorder. Some do, but a lot of people come in. The most common things I see are people who have anxiety and depression, and you will be surprised of how many people actually suffer from anxiety. There are a lot of people who suffer from anxiety. That is one of the most common diagnosis, common things that people struggle with is anxiety. So another day, another time. So thanks for
another day, another time. All right, so we're gonna thank you for joining us. Subscribe if you haven't. Subscribe, like and share. Subscribe, like and share, and also hit that little notification once you do subscribe so that you know every time that we are on. This is Straight Wellness. It is with Sherma P. Clark, myself, Sean Bolden. We do it every Friday night, 5:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If that time changes, we will let you know in advance. Sometimes we might have to shift a little, but nonetheless, we will be here. We're going to start trying to do it here on YouTube because we like to, I like the design and the ability that we're able to look at videos and everything. But on Instagram, we will still be coming to you as well, so you can hear it and you can always come to the actual live. I will pin it in the link. Go to the link and you are able to see what we're doing here on YouTube. But this is Straight Wellness. I am Sean Bolden. That is Sherma P. Clark. And in case you don't know, she is a licensed therapist / life coach. I am a man with a license, driver's license, and together we are speaking Straight Wellness, and we are here just giving our perspectives and opinions on life situations that we sometimes are faced with. So with that being said, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to leave you all with the prayer as I usually do. And I will say this: Heavenly Father, we come to you today to give you the praise and honor that you so rightfully deserve. That we thank you for your guidance in our lives. We thank you for your continued revelations that you reveal to us. We ask that you give us the ability to open up our eyes, to see, our ears to hear, our hearts to receive what it is that you have. We ask you to help us when we are struggling with some of these things that we spoke about tonight, coping versus healing. And we ask that you give us the healing, Lord, and you help us to be able to have good coping skills and not bad coping skills, to where we are not triggered and we are able to resolve some of these things that trigger us. We thank you for this, Lord. We say these things humbly. We ask that you forgive us for anything that we might have committed knowingly or unknowingly, and those who are suffering any of these mental issues or anxiety or any of the things that we spoke about today, that you help us get the help that we need. We say these things humbly. We say these things holy. In your Son, Jesus Christ's blessed name, for me, Father, Lord, and for all those who may know you in other ways, Father, Lord, we come to you and say amen.
Amen. Stay focused and positive. I'll meet you at the top.
There we go. All right now. All right, I'll talk to you again soon, and thank you everybody who has joined us, and adios. Oh, wait, I love you all. Let there be love. All right.